Howdy, welcome to Ausgrave Royalty. I am Justin. This video represents a continuation of Season 3 of Bolen's Gods and Goddesses. Season 3 in terms of our exploration of archetypal psychology on the channel. Check out the first 2 seasons to get more of a context of what we're talking about, including both the theory side and the application side. We are on to Hermes now. Hopefully I can get through my notes. So the last god we covered was Apollo, who was the favorite son, and another favorite son that Bolen articulates here is Hermes, of course, the second of the favorite sons. So she says, Apollo and Hermes were mythologically comfortable in Zeus's sky realm. As god of the sun, Apollo drove his chariot across the sky. As Zeus's messenger, Hermes could freely and easily travel to the top of Olympus. These two gods, like Zeus, are associated with emotional distance and mental activity. As archetypes, they are the two most at home in the realm of the mind. In terms of Zeus and Apollo, especially as distinct from Hades and Poseidon, who we've also talked about already, they are what I like to call the meta, or the mainstream, or the Joneses of keeping up with the Joneses. They're the high-value males of the manosphere. They're all about people with these dispositions, and archetypes are psychobiological predispositions that come with each human to prepare us for characteristic human experiences. More on that in the other seasons. But people who are strong in Zeus or Apollo or Hermes, according to Bolen, they're like well suited to the generation they're born in. Like they seem to just not have trouble with fitting in, basically. But Hermes is unique for a lot of reasons. And she says here that he could travel to the top of Olympus, but also he could also travel to the underworld. So he could go anywhere, basically, in the mythology. Hermes is famous for being the messenger god, but he's also the god of boundaries. And we've talked about alchemy before on the channel, how in the alchemical process you have a prima materia that's placed within a sealed container, boundaries, seals, right? And then that materia is cooked with fire. And this process elicits a transformation of some sort, depending on all of those conditions. The quality of the seal, the potency of the fire, the structure of the boundaries, and the nature of the prima materia itself that is the agent, is the material for the transformation. So Hermes is a powerful alchemical symbol. So Bolen says about Hermes the archetype: inventiveness, the capacity to communicate well, and the ability to think and act quickly are traits that can be used creatively to achieve or deceive. Hermes is also an unequivocally positive archetype as communicator of meaning and of rescuer of the child. And I'm going to pause here. When we say rescuer of the child or communicator of meaning, these are highly symbolic. So we're talking about could be the inner child or those undeveloped aspects. And when we say the underworld, we're talking about the unconscious, that without a strong Hermes presence in one's life, and that's what archetypes are, to an extent, various presences, you could have some Poseidon, you can have some Hades, you could have some Hermes active in your psyche that make you a characteristic way or characteristically not a way or one another. So the theory goes. But anyway, rescuer of the child could mean rescuer of the inner child. Maybe things that you had to shed. That you had to shed in order to fit in better with society. Anyway, so she says, we also invite Hermes to be with us whenever we are willing to venture in a new territory with an attitude of exploration and openness, an attitude that can have as much to do with reading as with foreign travel. And this applies to me a lot. I mean, with the channel, this is new territory for me as a new YouTuber. I'll be making a video game soon. I've composed electronic music. I've done stand-up comedy. I'm into boxing right now a lot. So I'm 37, and Hermes has never been more at the forefront, potentially, in my life as he is now. As the messenger, Hermes traveled between Olympus and the underworld. Diplomacy, public media, and commerce are the realms of this archetype. Making deals, making money, making allies are all engaging challenges for Hermes people. Hermes also represents the trickster, whether motives are good or bad. The ability to think like a trickster may help one to understand what is going on in another person's mind, or may make a detective better at his job, or help a man solve problems in unique or creative ways. And I'm going to pause here, while Hermes is under the sunlight, so to speak, of the Zeus umbrella and the Zeus blessing as one of the favored of the meta, Hermes probably is the biggest wild card and is the biggest complement to Zeus, because Zeus, he's very serious. He's all about status, being number one, being at the top. He's kind of tunnel visioned. And Hermes is a good complement because he's like a Jack Sparrow. He can be a wild card and shake things up for Zeus-minded people. Again, Hermes may inject some creativity into the Zeus personality, who's kind of all work and no play. Hermes brings some play to that, right? So the younger sibling rivalry. Bolen states that Hermes' relationship to his older brother Apollo is key to understanding the competitive aspect of this archetype. Hermes and Apollo had a friendly rivalry, but Hermes, despite the awareness that he was a have-not, was able to weasel much out of his older brother. Apollo was the favored son over Hermes. As the guide, Hermes often served as a guide, right? Whether guiding souls to the underworld or escorting Persephone out of the underworld. Hermes was a god who both created boundaries and breached all of them. Bolen cites the Jungian analyst Murray Stein as labeling Hermes the god of the significant passage, as in god of the liminal spaces, which we've talked about before on this channel. Spaces where real transformation takes place. A liminal space, for example, would be while the prima materia is being cooked in the fire, in the sealed container. As contrast to liminoid spaces, which are what Joseph Campbell would talk about as being the ordinary world. And Robert Moore points this out, but even an exotic vacation, a getaway, where there's a lot of novelty and a lot of great experiences, they may recharge one's batteries, but they're not transformative in the way we're talking about here. So, Bolen says, in analysis, Hermes serves as a guide through psychological spaces where needed, especially when it comes to integrating the parts of oneself towards individuation. Rescuer of the child. Hermes saved Persephone from the underworld, saved Dionysus at least twice, and even Ares owes his life to Hermes. He is the archetype that saves what is innocent and vulnerable, or divine and sacred, by providing meaning for an otherwise terrible experience. Alongside this, he is also responsible for rescuing our own inner child, the playful, trusting, and joyful parts held in the underworld. So in this section, Hermes the man, Bolen paints a caricature of what a Hermes-dominated man would be like. Like, nobody is only one archetype. We all have access to all the archetypes, and at different points in our lives, maybe the majority of our lives, some of these patterns, some of these archetypes, some of these gods or goddesses, whatever you want to call them, are prevalent as we deal with life. Or some are buried. Some maybe never accessed. But in this section, we're going to walk through what like a little biography of what a little Hermes person, and keep in mind, we're talking about a little Hermes boy, but since all humans have access to all the archetypes, females have access to the masculine archetypes, men have access to the feminine archetypes through the anima and the animus. We explore that in other videos, and I won't get into it here, but as women, they may finally identify with a lot of the Hermes qualities, even though he's a god. And vice versa, I could identify with Athena's traits somewhat, even as a male, right? That's so the theory goes. So let's talk about Hermes the man. The Hermes man is a quick mind. He grasps the significance of an idea or situation and is quick to act on his intuitions. Very different from Zeus, by the way, in that. And Apollo. He often has an always on the move quality as well. Trying to pin him down can be difficult. In the early years, the Hermes child will immediately be precocious, creative, and deceptive. He's an explorer roaming his room. He walks early and speaks early and gets caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He often gets into plenty of minor troubles. These can either be overlooked as children doing childish things, which can usually harm his character, or be punished too harshly, which is also a negative impact on his character. Parents will need to instill an understanding and respect for personal property and telling the truth. A firm, no-nonsense, Zeus-like attitude is what Hermes' sons need. Interesting. I was talking about the relationship between Zeus and Hermes earlier. I think that's true. Of course, Bolen's the expert. By the way, don't take anything I'm saying here as any kind of authority. Bolen's the authority. I'm just an enthusiastic fan, sharing my spin on it. But I think Hermes may need Zeus when the Hermes individual is young, right? Providing that structure for all the rambunctiousness, right? But I think later in life, those roles probably swap. Zeus may have spent a lifetime of being rigid, and a mature Hermes can shake him up and like lighten him up, so to speak, which is kind of a Zeus pun, lightning bolts and all that. Just a random thought. In adolescence, the Hermes child will attempt to find work that fascinates him, disregarding things like grades or social approval. I was more Apollo than Hermes. I'm speaking for myself. I was more Apollo than Hermes. I drank the Kool-Aid. I thought grades were everything. I thought grades were life and death. I even got shingles when I was young because I took school so seriously, and I was trying to put my heart into something I didn't deep down care about. It caused me a lot of stress. It's what happens when you're intensely extrinsically motivated, but not intrinsically motivated. That is to say, getting good grades, solely extrinsic, or at least 90%. Anyway, he'll be testing limits, whether that be conventional methods, authority, etc. Talent, luck, and the ability to make enterprising shifts is typical of a successful Hermes. He may drift from job to job and from interest to interest, trying to find work meaningful to him. In work, Hermes is no cog seeking a narrow specialization, and his individuality and a diversity of interests makes both unlikely. I mean, that's the epitome of me right now. He doesn't do anything by the book. His quick mind finds alternative routes and solutions and shortcuts. Whatever field he is in, he is likely to be an inventive generalist with an entrepreneurial attitude. The Hermes man also makes a talented psychotherapist as he guides his patients through their problems and issues. The Hermes presence in a man's psyche provides him with an ability to communicate persuasively, a friendly attitude that facilitates with ease within which a Hermes makes his way in the world, a potential for spontaneous, appropriate reactions that stand him in good stead, that keep him in good stead. With women, the Hermes man is helpful, friendly, and a great conversationalist. She thinks she has finally met the right man, but he's elusive. Typically, Hermes, as unexpected as his arrival may have been in her life, he may suddenly disappear. He can cause a lot of grief for the women that fall in love with him. With men, he's a gregarious loner. He has a gift for friendliness, which makes it easy for him to get acquainted with many people and do things with them. He has a wide circle of friends that cut across class and cultural lines. Sexually, the Hermes individual is playful and experimental as well, pushing and exploring boundaries. He's not judgmental. In marriage, a likely outcome is that the Hermes man stays a bachelor, dipping in and out here and there. But if he chooses to get married, he will expect that his wife maintain everything while he stays away. Bolen mentions that the Hestia, and we talked about this in the Hestia video, the Hestia-Hermes pair works well, as Hestia isn't jealous and content with maintaining the household while her Hermes man is away traveling. In terms of children, Bolen asserts that Hermes men aren't psychologically suited to be good fathers. They don't set boundaries, ironically, and the children know that they can get away with anything. On the bright side, however, Hermes does know how to play with them, take them on adventures, and stimulate the imagination. He's kind of like a kid himself with them. Sadly, children of Hermes fathers usually find themselves unprepared for the real world. In middle age, he'll be thriving if he's able to find fulfilling work. If he's still flitting about from opportunity to opportunity, he'll be struggling. It's all about establishing himself in some way. In his later years, he may become the wise world traveler, elder, if he was able to gain sufficient maturity. Otherwise, he may be a homeless wanderer or thief. In terms of psychological difficulties, the Hermes man can suffer from an abundance of impulsivity. He would fail the marshmallow test, in other words. A Hermes boy needs to be taught about limits, what is acceptable and what is unacceptable, and to develop a sense of right and wrong. There is also the unfortunate outcome of being a sociopathic trickster or unemotional puer aeternus. Basically, that's a term for a Peter Pan that can never grow up and thus has no ability for real intimacy. The eternal adolescent lives in a realm of possibility, unwilling to make a commitment to one thing or person, because he does not want to give up on the next possibility that comes along. His older brother Apollo and Zeus were the two other gods who were important in Hermes' life. These are the most important archetypes to develop for the Hermes man, as they help bring structure to his slippery nature. Apollo can help Hermes commit to a singular purpose, and Zeus can provide an inner authority needed for boundaries. Exactly. A Zeus mentor can also introduce Hermes to his network and serve as an apprentice. Hermes never married in the mythology and always longed for Aphrodite. If a Hermes can find an Aphrodite, a woman who challenges him and moves his emotions at a deep level, then he can move from the realm of his mind to the realm of his body. Finally, through spirituality, the Hermes man can find significant meaning and help guide other souls to meaning as well. Furthermore, with his gift of communication, he's able to relate the deep truths to others that he has divined. And I think of Alan Watts or Sadhguru. All right. I also think when hearing about all this, Dead Poets Society is such a great frame to think about the Zeus, Apollo, and Hermes energies. And I might do a video on this. I probably will, actually. You're seeing an idea come to Justin live. Isn't that special? But I did a video on the White Lotus television series, HBO season 2, and how, and the archetypal elements in that. So I might do one for Dead Poets Society, because especially that movie, it's basically what happens when a lot of Hermes activated children, granted some more so than others, are immersed in like a incredibly Zeus structure, very authoritarian, very prestigious, very no nonsense, right? And Robin Williams even, the ultimate Hermes. Granted, there's other archetypes at play with him as well. Maybe, yeah, I'll make a video on those details, but definitely Hermes is clearly present. We're talking about being the trickster, Robin Williams, a great communicator, great at empathizing and, guiding the students this way or that. So we got a Hermes activated teacher in the belly of the Zeus beast. Another thing I think about it with this is, last season we talked about king, warrior, magician, lover, and how the king had parallels to Zeus and even Apollo, who both seek to order the things around them. And we talked about the lover being the outlaw archetype. It's the only, according to Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette, who were the authors of King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, which we covered last season, they say the lover archetype that they classify is the outlaw. It's the only one that seeks to, that's boundaryless, that seeks to explore. That reminds me of Hermes here. And if that zest and trickster mindset can be contained with a Zeus structure that's highly like realist and objective and rational, if that a lot of that Hermes playful energy can be transmuted and contained, that could be very, very nice, very effective. So I have some closing notes about Hermes, just looking at them here. Yeah, like I mentioned before, I was definitely not in touch with Hermes in my childhood or adolescent years. In terms of testing limits or getting into minor troubles, that wasn't really me. I was a good kid, so to speak. And I don't mean that as a compliment. Not to say that I never got into trouble, but it wasn't a defining characteristic for me. For me, even getting into minor trouble was a horrifying thing because I never did. And it bothered me. And the fact that it bothered me meant that I was snared by the Zeus thing about, being a good boy. And like if you're in trouble, you're bad and all that stuff, and like the biggest joke of all, that grades are important. So, and I forgot who said it. I know Jordan Peterson said it. I think Warren Farrell, and Stefan Molyneux probably. A lot of people in the manosphere They say like part of manhood is being a dangerous person. I think of Rocky. You're gonna become a very dangerous person. Mickey. But yeah, and I'm still struggling like with that. Like I even recognize now at 37, I need to be getting into more trouble. I'm not dangerous enough. So I'm just reflecting here on Hermes. In terms of his tendency to explore and communicate between the different realms, I excel here. And having friends in a wide variety of places, definitely. I get along with everybody, which is why it's shocking to me how there's been people that have really done well in alienating themselves from me. But I think there's narcissism at play there, and I have a video on that. So yeah, I'm really proud of the friends I've made throughout my life. But it's also been kind of an identity crisis for me because I don't know it's hard for me to know like where I belong. And slowly I'm starting to realize that I'm kind of a jack of all trades, and that's just my nature. There are people who are like I'm an anarcho-capitalist, right? And I know all about like the big picture, and I'm not naive when it comes to, like, I think Frank Zappa said, government is the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex. I think that was him. But look, I wasn't born yesterday. And I know if you're not interested in politics, politics is still interested in you. I also know that a man's schooling should never interfere a man's education should never interfere. A man's schooling should never interfere with his education. Yeah, okay. Third time's the charm. Mark Twain. Like, I get it, okay? I get the big picture, and I've been through the manosphere, so I get the blue pill, the red pill. I've been down a lot of rabbit holes. I've been into gaming, Magic the Gathering, the music people, the philosophy people, the screenwriting people, the comedian people, athletes, track people, boxing people, business people, marketing people, programmers, tech people. And I'm in tech, but I don't consider myself a tech person. I have friends in all of these circles, right? But they're all much better than me in their own categories. Like, there are people who play games way more avidly than I do, yet, like, are they gamers? Or, like, I'm a casual compared to them, but I'm a gamer compared to people who don't play at all. So I can speak a lot of languages, and with Hermes, I identify with that. I've always been good at talking to people and have a good grasp at recognizing and understanding other people's problems. And a friend of mine said, like, a friend of mine worked at the same place, and he was talking to other coworkers. Then one of those coworkers came to me and said, "Did you know what so-and-so said about you?" He said that, you were the best person to come to if I had any problems to sort out. So yeah, I've always been that guy. And while I struggle with that identity, I realize that the jack of all trades aspect is my gift. I may not excel in any of those categories, but what I lack in that, I gain in the ability to travel through them, through all those different circles, whereas they could not, hypothetically. Anyway, I've rambled on. That's long enough. We'll see y'all in the next one. Hope y'all are getting something out of it. Let me know what y'all have in common with Hermes, or don't. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for sticking with me. Check the description for links below. Bye-bye.